Hi everyone, it's Karen Williams, the Book Mentor here, and I'm delighted to be live for the third in a three-part series, Is 2020 the Year of Your Book? Earlier this week, on Tuesday, I was talking about going from dreaming to deciding. Is writing a book the right thing for you to do this year? On Thursday, I talked about going from deciding to doing. Talked about the preparation stage that I believe that everyone needs to take to actually go through the process of making sure you're writing the right book for the right audience and making your book happen. And today I'm going to be talking about commitment, courage and confidence. Because you might have made the decision to write your book, you might have started doing it, but what needs to happen for you to actually get out of your own way, get the courage, get the commitment and get the confidence to make it happen? And that's what I'm going to focus on today. So yesterday I was talking about the 4 principles of preparation, the 4 main authority principles that I talk about in my new book, Becoming an Authority. So things like starting with the end in mind, finding your secret sauce, choosing the right subject and also the structure. Because when you do all of that, your book itself is going to be easier to write. So starting with the end in mind and knowing exactly what you're writing, who it's for, is the first thing to do. But of course, you're never going to have a book unless you make time to write it. So that's why the 5th principle is called scheduling and scribing. All S's you may have seen. So if you haven't read the book, I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of what's included. So writing a book, the scribing, is you have to make time to do it. And what I find with a lot of clients is the thought of actually writing 50,000 words is quite overwhelming. It's quite a daunting task. And I do find that many people get overwhelmed with the process and they think, you know, how long is it going to take? How much time do I need to give it? What do I need to do first? Can I just sit down and write, or is there any other magical tools or hints and tips you can share with me? But ultimately, it is really simply about that, making time to write your book. But also not being overwhelmed with the process. You know, yesterday I talked about some of the milestones that you might need to think about to go through the process. So if you haven't watched it, it's only just under 11 minutes long, so please do go and take a watch. So you do need to make time in the diary, you do need to make your book, you do need to be accountable to someone else. But I find with many clients it's also about finding your voice, finding your structure, finding your flow, finding your journey and making sure it reads right for you and your reader. Ultimately you need to take you and your ego out of the occasion, out of the situation, and put the reader in the forefront of your mind while you're writing it. And I do find that even the most seasoned writers struggle with writing a book, because writing a blog article, writing a magazine article or writing a business proposal is very different from actually writing a book. You know, it's a much longer process. Whether you're writing a 19,000 word book, a 96,000 word book, the process, you know, it's going to take you time to actually get your book out there. But with accountability and support you can make it happen. So that's the writing side of things. And obviously there's a lot more to it than that, but I know I've only got probably 10 minutes on the live with you today. So the next thing to think about is your story. How much of you do you put in your book? And with clients I often encourage them to share their story. Well, I always encourage them to share their story, but sometimes it's separately in a prologue. When you're drawing people into your story, you're telling people the why behind, you know, the reason you've written your book. You're sharing a little bit of the backstory, you're sharing some of the experiences you've been through that have led you to where you are today. Because let's face it, most of us are here where we are today because of the things we've experienced. You know, there's no way I would be a book mentor if it wasn't for the fact that I've had 10 years of writing my own books, getting them published, doing the marketing and having some amazing successes, and also helping dozens and dozens of clients along the way. So it's sharing your wisdom and actually being willing to step up to the plate and say, hey, this is me, and being vulnerable as well. And as I mentioned earlier, it's just about taking your ego out of the occasion, out of the situation. Because if you are doing something like, you know, sharing your story, it can be quite scary when you're vulnerable, when you're putting yourself out there, and maybe you're telling people things that you've never told anyone else before. Particularly that's the situation if you're writing your autobiography or your memoir, because obviously it's going to go so much more detail actually into some of the situations you've been through. So something to bear in mind. The other thing to think about is seeding other people's stories, or with their permission of course. So great example of this is if you are potentially using your book to promote one-to-one services or a group workshop, you might be thinking about how do I position myself. So stories from clients, stories from people that have worked with you, that's a great way of actually seeding other examples. Oh, I didn't know that Joe did that, I didn't know that Karen did that. So you're giving real life examples of how things work in practice. The other thing to think about is where you might get stuck on your journey, because there's loads of areas where you might get stuck, and when you know that you might get stuck, you can actually anticipate them and get over them. So for example, over the years we've worked with many clients who have struggled with various parts of the process. To be honest, something I've been through myself, especially with my first book, is the whole self-confidence side of things. Who am I to write a book? What if nobody likes it? What if it's not good enough? And I hear things like this all the time from people. Those kind of that inner turmoil that you go through when you know that you're sharing stuff that maybe you've never shared before, beyond your community, beyond a training course, beyond a coaching client, and you're actually sharing that for the first time. And actually I was speaking to Sarah Harvey this morning about her book, and I mentioned her in quite a lot of detail on Tuesday. And one of the things that we were talking about is that, you know, she's delivered dozens of training courses, probably hundreds of training courses. She's talked about her process so much. Even she's scared a little bit about putting her head above the parapet. But she's also excited. You know, the year-long process to get the book out there is something that she's been dreaming about for years and years and years. And actually, when you know that you've got that tangible product at the end of it, you're more likely to actually go out of, you know, get out of your own way to make it happen. But I think so many of us go through that. They go through the process of like, you know, what's going to happen once I get my book out there? But what happens if you stay small? What happens if you keep your journey, your wisdom, your experience, your knowledge to yourself? What benefit can you give to other people if you don't actually get it out there? And what happens if someone else writes the book that you want to write? And perhaps especially if you could do a better job. So all of these things are things to think about to get out of your own way to make your book happen. And who needs to help you on your journey? And that's really why I do believe it's important to have a support team. So whether you work with a book mentor, whether you have peer accountability, whether you engage an editor, a designer, actually if you're an expert in your business, and you're talking about your expertise in the book, doesn't it make sense to employ other people to help you? If you can raise your profile through your book, do you really want to be learning how to typeset it? If you want your book out by a certain date, do you really want to get stuck and, you know, get in your own way and get in a bind and not actually reach the deadline that you desire? If you're struggling to find your voice, wouldn't it be great to get feedback from someone who knows what they're talking about to tell you how you can make it even better? And if you're kind of working, you know, I've had so many conversations with people who are struggling to decide which angle to take with their book, wouldn't it make sense to talk to someone objective like me to help you to get out of your own way, get out of your own head, to make it happen in the best possible way, to get the best results from your book and your readers? So certainly, you know, doing all of that, getting out of your own way, there's so much involved with the writing process. And then the 9th and 10th principle in the authority principles, and I do suggest you get a copy of Becoming an Authority if you want to find out more. The last two are around sales and showing up in a bigger way. Now, marketing is one of those things that I encourage all clients to think about when they start writing their book. It's not something that you just hook on to the end. Because marketing, building your community, raising your profile, building your credibility is something that you need to do right from the very start. That comes in the preparation stage as well as through the writing process. But think about sales as well, because one of the things I was talking to Sarah about this morning, so she started working with me just over a year ago, and her goal was to have her book out by the 8th of January, and I'm going to her book launch next Wednesday, the 8th of January. And one of the things we were talking about was about sales, you know, putting your book, and she knows this, so I'm not teaching her anything new, but just think about it from your point of view. Putting your book on Amazon is not the way to get sales. The way to actually really build your profile through the book and actually to make a bigger difference through the book is to think about how you can make sales on a bigger scale, and also what you can do off the back of the book. Hence the fact I talked earlier in the week about the whole preparation side of things. So if you're wondering what I'm talking about, we talked about things like bulk sales. You know, how do you get your book in front of more people through maybe selling 10, 20, 100 copies at a time? And Steve Judge is a really great example of that. He's done that with his book, Don't Lean on Your Excuses, so he's certainly one to look for, and I did an interview with him last year. Sally Kay, so she's another great example of someone who made a really big impact when she launched her book by building her community, and I think she sold 2,000 copies within just the first few months of launch. So think about how you can make a bigger difference in that way. Do you want to get speaking engagements off the back of your book? And I spoke to someone recently who's got big goals for 2020 with speaking engagements, and he knows that he can use his book as a tool to actually get in front of more people, not only to sell his book at the events, but to actually use it to build his credibility. Kate Barrett, who I also interviewed last year, she did a great job with getting sponsorship for her book. So she took the preparation to a different level, and she actually got sponsors on board to actually be part of the book as she wrote it. And they also helped her with the launch and the sales when it went live. And then it comes to showing up in a bigger way. How do you show up in a bigger way? So one of the things Sarah and I were talking about this morning is the plan for her book. It's not just about what happens on the 8th of January. It's what happens for the next year, the year after that. It's about making sure your book is an integral part of your marketing plan. How do you make sure that your book is going to really impact more people and make a bigger difference? So a really great example I'm going to share with you. Today actually I've been featured in Coach magazine, so do go and take a read of it. A couple of clients have also been featured, and I know I'll be recommending more people to Teresa, who runs the magazine, to be featured in future episodes as well, future editions should I say. I've been interviewed quite a lot for quite a few podcasts recently, you've probably seen through my website. So again, you know, look at opportunities like that. So one of the things I said to Sarah, because we were talking about her book launch today, and as I said, it's not just about the launch, although we talked about the physical launch, is you need to think about sort of the different pockets of areas of marketing. And I feel like I'm going off at a tangent, but I'm going to stay with it anyway. You've got the kind of the online presence to think about, so things like social media, how you can ask people to share pictures of them with their books. Steve's really great at doing that. You can share Amazon reviews. As soon as you get a review on Amazon, you know, share it, do a meme or something to get it out to more people. Use the content for your book for blogs, for guest blog posts, podcasts and things like that. So you've kind of got the social aspect, the things that you can control is definitely one way of showing up in a bigger way. And the second way of showing up in a bigger way is thinking about who do you know who might be able to help you. So it is about getting in front of other people's audience by sharing really great content with them, by being able to cross-promote each other. And actually, as well as sharing, you know, within your own community, think about your connections. How can you build your connections more to get your book in front of more people that you can help? Anyway, I'm going off at a huge tangent here. That's not what I was here to talk about today. But really, if 2020 is the year of your book, it is time to make it happen. So what do you need to do first? Certainly I recommend you get started with the planning side of things so you know exactly what you're writing, who it's for, and what are they going to get from it. Then you need to make time to write it. But all the time think about the business intent behind your book. What is your goal for you and your book and your business? How does it all fit together? You know, your book shouldn't be a standalone thing over here. Your book should be an integral part of the business. And once it's an integral part of the business, it will be so much easier to write. Believe me, honestly, trust me with that. And then you can see how you can get better results and you can measure your success off the back of it. So what does it take to write a book in 2020? Well, it does take commitment. It does take that decision to actually say, hey, I'm writing a book this year. I am going to make a bigger difference. It's about putting that time in the diary. It's about having somebody to keep you accountable. And it's about getting out of your own way to make it happen. It's about courage. It's about turning that dream and going, actually, what I know is worth something. It's about getting out of your own way in terms of being brave, sticking your head above the parapet, maybe being a little bit disruptive as well. And it's also about confidence. And actually having that conversation with Sarah earlier, she was already telling me that although a handful of people have read her book already, she's got that credibility and that belief in herself now, even more so than she had before. You know, writing her book means that she's delved into her topic on a much deeper level. She knew her stuff already, but actually she intimately knows it so much more now through the research, through the development, and through the writing process. She's got to know her knowledge and her expertise on a much bigger level. So you need the commitment, you need the confidence, you need the courage to get out of your own way. So how can I help you? Well, one of the reasons for developing the Authority Mentoring Programme that starts this January is to help you to achieve all of that. I'll take you through the entire Authority process to actually help you to go from that little seed of an idea you have right now to that final manuscript in June that you're proud of, that you're confident of. And there are so many unexpected benefits of writing a book, just through the courage, the confidence to actually have it and make it happen. That belief you have in yourself when you know you've got something important to say. And the realisation that some of the lessons you've learned on your journey are incredibly important, are going to inspire people maybe not to make the same mistakes as you, or maybe if they have gone through something similar, to come out the other side with much more confidence and belief in themselves. If you want a timeline and a plan to make it happen, do have a conversation with me. What I love about the group program is that not only do you have access to me and my expertise, you have access to my team, and you also have access to a group of people who have got a similar goal to you. It can be a lonely business writing a book, so doesn't it make sense to make it as easy as possible to make it happen and to achieve the success you really desire? So next step, book a call with me, no obligation consultation, to discuss your ideas, just to find out whether they're worth pursuing, to develop that confidence in what you want to achieve with it. And then if I can help you, we can talk about how that can work. Thank you very much, and let's hope that 2020 is the year of your book. Come and have a chat and find out more.